Welcome back to Objective 8 in Chapter 13 of our 3A1 series, and this is another fairly quick objective to get through here. In this objective, we'll describe the properties and applications of non-ferrous metals as well as alloys. So earlier in this chapter, we spoke about ferrous metals of steels and irons and said that a ferrous metal contains iron and is therefore naturally magnetic. Now, non-ferrous metals therefore do not contain iron and therefore are non-magnetic. Simple as that. The classic examples to discuss regarding non-ferrous metals are things such as copper and aluminum. We also then get our copper alloys, such as brasses and bronze. Then our soft metal like lead, zinc, tin, nickel, which we use a lot for alloys, and then some precious metals here called gold and silver. We don't see too much gold and silver in our industry, but all of the others we do, and we have sort of talked about previously. Okay then, so with regards to copper, copper comes from copper ore and is generally smelted by electrolysis. And electrolysis is basically where a chemical reaction takes place by passing electrical current through it, and it then changes its chemical structure. It can also be done by acid leaching as well. Now, copper is a fantastic material in that it is extremely electrical and thermally conductive, which means it passes electricity or electrical current very well with low resistance, and also it allows heat to pass through it very well with less resistance. Copper is also very ductile in that it can be drawn out into a smaller cross section without breaking. So classic examples for copper are things like piping or things like copper cable for the electrical industry. Extrusion processes for things like that are well suited for copper. Copper is also extremely corrosion resistant as it forms a layer of copper oxide. I suppose a classic example for that is, I'm sure you've all seen a photograph of the Statue of Liberty and it looks green. It's actually copper coloured because that's what it's made of. It only looks green because what you're seeing is the layer of copper oxide that's protecting the base metal from further corrosion. So that's a good classic example of how copper resists corrosion by forming this passivating layer on top of this copper oxide. Copper's very tough in that it will withstand good impacts, but its disadvantages are it's quite heavy, 20% heavier than iron, for example, and it's also quite expensive. Now, some interesting comparisons on those 2 points can be made with different metals. Check out the densities here of copper versus mild steel or low carbon steel, and as well as cast iron and aluminum. Copper is very heavy, more heavy than you realize. Most people would not think that copper is heavier than iron, but as you can see with the densities here, it is by quite a ways. Now, in terms of copper prices, at the time of recording this, which is in May of 2019, copper is currently around about $1.61 per pound, as versus aluminum, which is only down at 21 cents per pound. So as I said, copper can be a very expensive metal to purchase, and also with its extreme weight versus aluminum, depending upon the selections, depends upon what project it's going to be used for. So what do we use it for then? Well, in power engineering, we often use it for heat exchange tubes, and we're talking here low pressure and process vessel sort of stuff. Hydronic heating pipes, which is where we use hot water systems. Electrical cabling we've mentioned, as well as in the electrical industry, we're talking about things like earth electrodes, which are for grounding, which is basically a copper rod that's driven into the ground, and then a grounding cable is connected to it, so the building is now staked down to the ground. Lightning conductors are very similar in that we run copper tapes down the side of buildings. So when a building is struck by lightning, the electricity runs around the outside of the building and down to ground. It's also used a lot for motor windings and transformer windings that you'll get into in 3A2, and as well as things like heat sinks, which is a place where we can wick heat away from an area that we otherwise don't want it. Now, copper is also found a lot used in copper alloys, and this is our brasses and our bronze. We use brass and bronze in power engineering for low pressure applications. And again, what do I mean by low pressure and temperature? You'll get into that in 3A2 when you do piping and valves. So I'll leave that for that discussion then. Now, with regards to copper alloys then being used for your brasses and your bronze for things like tubes, piping, fittings, bearings, even the innards of a valve, which is called valve trim, we have to be clear of what is the difference between brass and bronze. And this is something that gets mixed up an awful lot. The easiest way to remember it, which I've mentioned to you earlier, is that of brass and bronze, the one that doesn't have the Z in it has the Z in it. That's my silly little way of remembering it. So brass doesn't have a Z, so it has Z in it, and the Z is zinc. In terms of the percentage, it's around about 60% copper and 40% zinc. This makes it quite malleable, which means it's easily workable. It's corrosion and wear resistant, easily cast into a variety of different shapes, and generally in high pressure applications we find it being used for fittings and valves as it wears nice and smooth and has our good corrosion resistant properties. But brass on the whole is more of a low pressure thing if it's a brass fitting. The other one now is bronze. Bronze is the one with the Z in it, so it doesn't have the Z in it. What it has in it is tin. So bronze is copper and tin. And the approximate percentages are around about 88% copper and 12% tin. Once again, good resistance to corrosion. Can be harder than brass, but also not abrasive in that it won't wear and cause things like spalling and things of that nature. Bronze can also have the addition of phosphor, which is actually an impurity, and this is kept at very small amounts, i.e. up to 1%, and phosphor bronze can then have increased hardness for certain applications. Another type of bronze is aluminum bronze. So this one is obviously bronze that has aluminum added into it in around about the 5 to 8% mark. Applications for aluminum bronze include bushings and internal fittings, as once again, good corrosion resistance as you're mixing the aluminum with the copper. It's also quite strong, and we can also have small amounts of other elements added in, such as nickel, iron, silicon and manganese for any sort of bespoke applications that they are required for. The next one is silicon bronze. So this is obviously having silicon added into it. This one again, readily shaped and welded, so good malleability, easy to weld, extremely good corrosion resistance, and this is generally used in chemical applications and chemical processes for sort of very caustic or acidic chemicals, as it will resist that corrosion caused from them. Aluminum. Aluminum has been referred to as the wonder metal of the 20th century. Aluminum comes from bauxite ore, where the main sort of worldwide depositions of that, or deposits of that, are in places like Jamaica and Australia, places like this. Aluminum comes from a process called the Bayer process and the Hall-Héroult process, and the great thing about aluminum is that it's very light. We saw its density earlier. Very corrosion resistant, as it forms a layer of aluminum oxide over it, which is like a grey silvery colour that you've probably seen on aluminum fittings. It's also very malleable and ductile, so again ideal for things like piping, ideal for things like extrusion processes, anything like that you'd find for things like gutters, aluminum siding. It's also excellent for electrical conductors. It's not as good as copper for electrical conductors, but it's very close to copper. It can be alloyed, of course, with other elements being added into it, and in terms of its cost, it's very much cheaper than copper, which is a big selling point. And then also, of course, it's I've mentioned this earlier as well, it's the only metal known to man where as the temperature decreases, its tensile strength increases. All other metals tend to become more brittle at lower temperatures. Aluminum doesn't. And because of that, aluminum is also found in a lot of applications for things like sort of cryogenic cooling, extremely cold refrigeration or freezing applications in propane plants and places like that. So aluminum is a wonderful metal for that. Okay, another one to talk about is white metal or babbitt, and I believe you've spoke about this one before in 4th class as well. White metal or babbitt that we often see is being used in bearings and bearing casings and things of that nature. And white metal or babbitt, whatever you want to call it, is an alloy made of lead and tin. And depending upon the applications of it, it will depend upon what the percentages are as to whether it's a lead-based babbitt or a tin-based babbitt. You can see at the bottom of my slide here, I've done the sort of comparisons between the two with the various percentages of our tin and lead versus slow speed heavy loads or high speed light loads. And annoyingly, every now and then they do ask you questions about the percentages of this material. I know they're difficult numbers to remember. I would generally just suggest that you remember that the high speed light load one is the tin dominant babbitt and the slow speed heavy load one is the lead dominant babbitt. And the beauty of this as well is it's very sort of soft as a metal, so it will wear nice and smooth and not be abrasive in applications like bearings. It also has good thermal conductivity, which means it will conduct the heat, which is obviously ideal characteristic, if you like, with regards to bearings, because don't forget we're also going to cool our bearings usually with some sort of flow of oil so we can wick the heat away from them. Okay, so that's really it for Objective 8, a very quick one with just a few notes about our various non-ferrous metals. So give this a review. It's very similar to what we spoke about back in 4th class, and then when you're ready, let's come back again for another short objective and have our last little chat in this chapter about Objective 9, where we'll take a look at polymers, ceramics and composites. Okay then, so see you back whenever you're ready. Take care.